Hello everyone, this is going to be my review for a Specialized Camber mountain bike base edition. I'm going to be switching back and forth maybe between camera modes. This is the wide angle. It's going to get a little distorted. With that said, I just wanted to kind of say what am I doing here? Why am I doing this review? I don't see a whole lot of reviews for the lower end bikes. I wouldn't really consider this a lower end bike, but you see a lot of the elite carbon fiber, super master editions. I've had being a veteran, I've had some different views on different products over the years. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit as I go through the review, what's changed on this bike and what's changed with my riding style, philosophy, and what I'm trying to accomplish here besides, just having fun and enjoying some of those. I'm in Minnesota and there are some awesome trails here. We're going to see some views. Yes, we're going to see some views. We're going to see some videos here at the end, what I thought about the bike as I took it across Minnesota. Some of the places I went to, there's about 4 main places that I absolutely love to ride. And they are actually in the top, 2 of them are in the top 10 for the Midwest, which is pretty cool. Anyways, getting on with it. Like I said, don't see a whole lot of reviews for these lower ends. So I am going to try to do a brief overview and a extended overview. So some extended overview is going to get pretty technical, but it's going to get be kind of long-winded, but I will obviously put that in a title. I'll probably do 2 different ones. So getting started, why did I buy this bike? I wanted something that was kind of mid-range. I wanted something that was comparable to my old bike that, I could kind of see if I wanted to do more enduro riding again, or if I wanted to do more just trail riding. But this bike will get you around just about anywhere. You could even go downhill a little bit on this too. I've done a couple of downhill courses. Maybe I'll show you some of those. Those videos didn't turn out too well. But what were my first impressions on this bike? Well, I like the color. Obviously, the color has always been kind of a selling point for me. This one's kind of a matte gray. Not real shiny, not real flashy. Doesn't need to be. It has 120 millimeters of travel, which was at least as much, if not more, than my other bike. I had a silo. Let's see if I can bring up a picture of my old bike. Okay, so that was my old enduro when it was brand new, about 2006. And it had a silo fork in the front and a Fox in the rear, Fox shock in the rear. Just sold that. And this is going to be the first bike I've ever owned that does not have any Fox on it, which is kind of interesting. My Cannondale obviously had a Fox shock on it too. So that was kind of different. And like I said, my first impressions on this bike, I felt like it was really fast. And I think that was because one of the major game changers for me was the wheel size. You got the 29-inch wheels, which makes the fork in the front look like it's not as much travel. And you're probably looking really distorted on the wide view here, but so that was the main thing that kind of made me feel like, oh, this bike is fast, it's great, I love it. I just went ahead and bought it, and I do love it. It is a great bike for XC riding, not racing, but riding. You can do enduro a little bit. You can hit some of the bigger stuff, technical sections, some jumps, tight turns, what have you. This bike will really actually conquer them pretty nicely. So let's just go through the basics. Like I said, I've been biking for a lot of years. Some of these people have not. Some of you out there have not been. So what's the component package on this? Really briefly, SRAM, Truitive gear rings, and crank arm. We have a what's that derailleur? This is a SRAM front derailleur, Dior rear derailleur. So real basic stuff. I don't know what the sprocket size is. And then up front we have obviously disc brakes like I had before. Don't like these disc brakes as much. These are Gemini something or another. Tektro Gemini. Got a RockShox through axle. That was different for me. I'll talk about that a little bit here. RockShox Sector front fork, I believe, which was which is probably one of my favorite parts of the bike. X-Fusion rear shock, so on and so forth. Pretty much basic stuff. Oh, and then the hubs and wheels, I believe they're specialized. So that's the basic components. Let's just go into it and talk about the suspension as long as we're, moving the camera around so that you can't see anything. So here's an X-Fusion rear shock. So like I said, I've not ridden anything other than Fox, and I actually really like the shock. It has its rebound dial, just like anything else. It's got a lockout. There's no sag, whatchamacallit thingy on here. But the thing I don't like about the rear shock, pretty minor, is this is the directions, which they're so tiny. Oh, you can actually see it on here. My camera, I have a V20 phone, LG V20 phone. Not that I'm reviewing that, but it does a pretty good job. I've actually zoomed in to stuff up on a shelf somewhere, and I was actually able to see it just by using the camera. So anyways, I have a sticker on here. Obviously, that's my sticker. We have just the regular FSR suspension. I don't know what FSR stands for. Maybe it's a frickin' sweet ride. I just made that up. Got the yeah, got the horse link right here. Horns link, I forget if that's the right term. So there's that pivot there. I was gonna say the ratchet, the swing link thing or whatever you call it. And then there's a pivot obviously down here. It's behind the crank arm. I think looking at the suspension, I have not really liked the FSR that much. On my old enduro, it did bob quite a bit when I was pedaling. I am not noticing it much at all. So they really dialed it in. I believe this is what they call a max strut type of setup. I could be wrong on that, but that is I was really like that. It just I have not had it bob a whole lot. It does move a little bit under high power, which I think is understandable. My next bike I'm going to get will probably be I think I'm looking at probably a Santa Cruz or Pivot, and they are very resistant to bob, even more so. So let's look at the front fork. I'm going to talk about the front end here a little bit. This is a RockShox sector fork, 120 millimeters of travel. I just had it rebuilt. I had both front and rear rebuilt already this fall, and there's a dial up here I think it's for compression. It has a lockout. I usually like to have 1 or 2 clicks away from the top. That's why I've been riding it. But man, it's just been a sweet fork. Like I said, I had it rebuilt, and I'm going back to the days. I'll see if I can bring up a picture of my Cannondale. So yeah, that was a picture of my Cannondale, souped out with my bomber fork. I had a RockShox, hello, Marzocchi, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Z1 BAM when they first came out. And if anybody's been around that long and they remember those, they were just sweet forks. A buttery smooth open bath system that just soaked everything up. We were riding down the middle of railroad tracks. We were going up and down steps. Yes, up steps, flights of steps, like 6, 7, 8 steps. I was doing that. Haven't done that yet on this bike, but I've been doing that on other bikes that I've had. It's because I learned how to do that, and I think this fork would totally handle that. I just love it. RockShox has done an amazing job on the sector fork. It's got the oversized, this part, obviously the oversized headset going into tapered up into the thing, head tube, and it's got the through axle, RockShox through axle doohickey, and I really like that because it doesn't feel like, even if it's like this, I'm riding on a trail, at least the wheel's not going to move much or potentially fall off like a regular quick release. I've heard horror stories about that. Let's talk about the quick release real quick. This is a through axle, obviously done by RockShox. See their little nifty logo on there. And you set it in between the two notches here to tighten and lower it. This is the one thing I don't like about the bike, is that I was not used to this, and I kind of chewed up the edges of this. So when you tighten and you push it in and then left or right, tighten, loose. I think it would be this way to loosen it, this way to tighten it. But you have to push it in as you push it down. And that's been kind of the remedy for that. I like the through axle, but I do not like how it functions. I think I've gotten used to it now. On the rear, we have the same. This thing here is it's just basically screws down in, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. However, I've had a lot of issues with this rear end. This thing, you're not going to bump it on the toe. Well, I bumped it and it got into this position. And I didn't think that was going to happen either, but it did. I've also noticed some creaking coming out of the rear end, which I think has now been fixed. They did some adjustments. The cassette was loose, I believe. And then I think this thing got loose. There's an Allen key in here that I tightened down. I also have it in a pretty tight position. I can't move it with just one hand. But I had some creaking coming from this when I was going uphill hard. At different parts on different trails, and I was like, seriously? But it hasn't done that. I've ridden, I don't think it did it when I was in Duluth, and I don't think I did it last few times I've been riding. I was out on Red Wing. Those are some of the key places I've been riding, some of the best places you can ride. And so, with that said, what did I change in this bike when I got it first? I liked pretty much everything. The only thing I didn't like was the handlebars. The handlebars were a wider sweep than I was used to, so I went down to a Truitive. I think it's a 680. I really love the Truitive components. The handlebars have been awesome. I have the Specialized handlebars that it came with were, like I said, a little too wide for me. I'm thinking I'm probably going to get used to that. Just as a history, I was not used to the riser handlebars. I used flat handlebars. I don't know if you saw that on my Cannondale, but I had a stem that came out to about here. Yeah, it came out to about here. No, I'm kidding. A longer stem and flat handlebars. I went to the riser handlebars on my Enduro, and now I'm going to the shorter stem. And I seem to be liking the changes. So I'm thinking about going with a wider handlebars again too. But like I said, this was a game changer to get me back in. And so I'm literally liking the shorter handlebars. What else did I really like about the bike? I did talk about the things I didn't like: the handlebars, the quick releases, thingies, getting used to more than anything. One of the things I think a lot of people change are tires and saddles. And I haven't had any issues with the tires. I've had some spin outs. But again, like I said, getting back into it, getting used to it, blah, 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 has been, don't have any complaints on the tires. And they are, got a purgatory up front, and I got a ground control in the rear. So Specialized tires. I've actually really liked the Specialized tires over the years. Haven't had anything bad to say about them. One of the things I will note on the tires is I have not had a true flat on this bike yet. And I have ridden it, Cuyuna Range. If anybody's been up there, people are saying, "Oh, I always get flats there." Well, I didn't get any flats there. I did get a one of those goofy flats on the front tire where it was it would hold air for about 2-3 hours, so I could ride for 2-3 hours, and then it would start getting low, and then in the morning or several hours later, it would be completely flat. I ended up changing it, obviously, but so that was my only gripe. And it's not that big of a deal. It's just like I have not had a real true flat on this bike yet. And I've ridden 70-some new trails I'd never ridden before. So that was my renaissance, blah, blah, blah. The saddle. I really like the saddle. I usually change saddles. That's one of the things I've always changed on bikes when I get them. And I'm not going to change the saddle. I really like it. I have had absolutely no beef. The other thing I don't like, though, is it didn't come with a quick release. And this is not a dropper seat post. It's just a standard seat post. So those are two things I'm looking at, possibly. I'm a veteran of, flipping the quick release and lowering the saddle for whatever I'm doing. And I really haven't had that option. So I've been kind of getting used to having the seat, right there. I haven't had any issues with it, but I have felt some maneuverability losses because of that. Um, so that's kind of pretty much it. Let's just kind of take a review here and see if I can come up with anything else. So yeah, that's kind of my final thoughts. As an added bonus, both of these shocks are air shocks. And there's no coil in here, which is another first for me. The rear shock has an air valve on the other side here. I got a shock pump. There's an air thing on the front fork right here where you fill in the air. And what's really nice about the RockShox fork, once again, is they have this guide right here, which I kept on there because I wasn't sure if I was going to keep the bike. I'm kind of glad I kept it on there. It gives you, yeah, you can see it. It gives you rider weight and what you should set it at. And then, it gives you kind of some more statistics. I guess one last final thing I can add is a water bottle mount. I actually have a functional water bottle mount on this bike, whereas my other one was like down here. And it's just like, I'm reaching for my water bottle. Oh, there's a rock. You know what I'm talking about, people. There's only one water bottle mount, but I haven't felt like I'm needed anymore. Haven't gone on any epic rides where I need, to carry 17 water bottles with me. These marks here are just wear things I put on there. I got some on the other side too, just to see how the crank's wearing. You can see just from my riding, I got a little bit of wear. My other bike was it was completely silver right here. But I'm going to wrap it up here and just say, if you're looking for a great all-around trail bike where you can do a little bit of everything and kind of get a full taste for everything and see what you really want to do, I get an all-around bike. This is definitely a punch for the money that you spend. I think it was about 2K with everything all together. I put 100 or 200 into just the basic stuff, changing the handlebars, servicing the suspension. I still have a free tune-up yet, which I will probably be using in the spring. So there you have it. Specialized Camber bike. Folks, I forgot to add some videos. And one last thing, the grips. I don't like the grips very much. Ah! They're all getting all chewed up. But that's the story of the grips. So let's go see what this bike does on the trails. Here we go. You gotta wait for it though. Alright folks, this is Cuyuna Trails, Cuyuna Recreation Area, and this is descending Sandhog Mountain on the Camber. And the bike was almost brand new to me when I got to these trails, and this was an accidental trail. I didn't mean to do this trail. I just kind of was doing trails, and I did this one. And this trail has now become one of my favorite trails there. As you can see, it's got lots of little turns in it. There's lots of little rollers. There's a couple little jumps in here too that I think I was shouting out with glee at. I wish I could have the volume on this video. I'm still having an issue with that in my action cam. There is volume there, but it just doesn't want to cooperate. There's some rocks right there that I went over. Bike just performed great over that. And it just made the ride that much more enjoyable. I just can't say enough good things about there's some more rocks there. Can't say enough good things about this area. I've never been up there. It is the #1 destination for me in Minnesota for biking. And you'll see here in a moment, another one of my gleeful moments came right about here as I noticed that the trail was just right on the edge of the hill. And as you saw in the beginning of the video, I was at the top of the hill. So lots of scenic views. But the best part is coming. Sharp curves. Here we go. The downhill was pretty average, but it was beyond average because you got these fun rolling back and forth, kind of like a roller coaster, a mini roller coaster. And the bike just rolled with utter joy through this part. And this is what made the trail for me, and this is what made the area for me too, because a lot of trails are like this up there. Bobsled's another one of my favorites on the other side of the area, the biking area. But that's pretty much Cuyuna Lakes, and my first trip there with the Camber was just awesome. Up next is Theo Wirths' uh, greatest flow trail, I guess. This is just an unreal, awesome flow trail in Theo Wirths. The legend for me here was that I did not even know this trail existed after 20 years of riding, and as you can see, it is just loaded with, this is a little jump here, followed by another little jump, and a bunch of little rollers, or mini jumps, or whatever you want to call them. And it was just an unreal trail that I had to enjoy on that camber, and it just ate it up. It just rolled over everything. It's a great trail if you haven't discovered it yet. It's actually where the Quaking Bog is, and it's right up in and around the hillside that exists there, north of Brownie Lake and south of the main trails, south of 55. I didn't think there was anything south of 55 in Theo Wirths. So we're going to jump ahead here in a second to another section of the trail, but this is going uphill here. I believe when I did this trail, the second or third time I ended up changing my gears, but for the most part, first time I did this, I just did it with just whatever. I did it one speed pretty much. You can see I'm slowing down pretty much here, but it's a very, very well used trail, very liked trail. Here I am going down a little bit of a hill here as I come up to going to come up to some other riders here in a second, but yeah, that's just the performance on this new trail and the excitement of finding this new trail, not knowing that it was there. I don't think it's been there for very long, maybe a decade. I really don't know, but it is definitely the best kept secret in Theo Wirths. There is a little drop in here. It was one of the only things I didn't do. I went to the left of it, and I don't know if that's coming up here or not. I don't know if I captured it in this part or not. I may have. You start going really slow as you come up the hill, and then it's there, and then you go down a hill pretty fast after that, so it gives you some momentum. But we are coming up to the other riders and the end of the Theo Wirths section of the review. There's always riders at this point where you go down and up and down and around the embankment here, which gives you a lot of speed. I don't know why there's always riders there. And then there's some little rollers, lips, jumps, wherever, what have you, after this. But that's pretty much Theo Wirths. Let's move on to the next area for the Camber bike review. So our final destination, unfortunately, due to time, is Red Wing. Red Wing's, I believe this is called Southern Cross or Southern Crossing. And it is a super fun, fast trail, as you can see here. Right next to it is the downhill, which is redonkulous. And by the time I got to this, I was just rolling like crazy, starting to do different things on the camber, feeling just the agility of my experience. Obviously, there's a couple of little ramps that you go off. There's one right there. And this last one you go off of it, it's a little rugged right after it, but you can just get rolling fast. And there's some serious roots, a couple of little drops, and other obstacles that make it a challenge, but make it a lot of fun. And there's this root section we're going to come to here in just a second. And I cut that out, but I actually have mastered that now. This is a little bit farther down on the trail, probably about 200-300 feet below it. And it slows down a little bit here as it crosses the downhill trail and an X right up here. And if you can make the switchback right here and go back on the downhill trail, you're doing really good. But one of the reasons why I wanted to put this in here is just because of the scenic beauty of this particular trail. I think this is why we all ride, is just to get out into the remote areas and just enjoy it. And now that I have a bike that's really performing and really rolling, and I can feel like I can do new stuff, crazy stuff, then now I'm out doing that on the camber. So like I said, it really performed well. for the terrain here. And you can see on the left here is a outlook going down, looking down onto the city of Red Wing, and then we'll just go off a little drop right there, and then that concludes my Camber bike review. What I wanted to conclude with here is obviously the view that you're seeing now, but just wanted to let you know that I will do probably a more extended version, and I will include some other stuff for an extended version at some point in time of the review, depending on what I feel like I can do. So stay tuned in.